Pi, then you should pick up one of our Element 14 Raspberry Pi starter kits. So inside you'll find a power adapter, an 8GB SD card, a case, and the Raspberry Pi Model B.
The Raspberry Pi is a single board computer that has everything you need all in one spot. As you can see, it's a bare circuit board and you're going to want to protect it. But before we put it in its case, we're going to take a look at all of its components. At the core of the Raspberry Pi is an ARM processor. It's the same type of processor that's used in a lot of modern devices from tablets to smartphones.
So starting on the back, there's actually the slot for the SD card. There's also two USB ports so you can plug in your keyboard and your mouse. There's an Ethernet port for wired connections, the power supply of course, an HDMI output for connecting to a monitor or a television, an audio jack for earbuds or your headphones, and there's an RCA Video Output.
That's a lot on a little board.
Yeah.
Let's protect this thing. Let's put it in its case. So I'm just going to stick it in. So you just put it in.
Like snaps together, right?
Yep, snaps together. And that's pretty much it.
Nice. There you go.
Simple.
We should mention again, there are only two USB ports. And if you're like a lot of people, you have a traditional wired mouse and a keyboard, that's going to take up both USB ports. So if you want to plug in a thumb drive or speakers, you're kind of out of luck unless you get a wireless combo. That way you only use up one of the ports.
A USB just plugs in simply like this.
It's easy. So the Raspberry Pi starter kit comes with a 5-volt power adapter with a micro USB cable. It actually plugs in like this, but we're not going to plug it in just yet. The Pi will start to boot up immediately. It doesn't have a power switch. And if you're not in the US, don't worry about the North American power cord. We'll ship you one that'll work in your country. So the way you connect your monitor kind of depends on the type of monitor you have. The Pi has an HDMI output, so if you're lucky enough to have an HDMI monitor, you would use that type of cable to connect the Pi and then to the monitor.
This is the best type of cable. Not only does it output an HD signal, but also transmits audio. So if your monitor or television has speakers built in, you're also going to get an audio signal.
Oh, that's awesome. A DVI monitor has this type of an input on the monitor. So to connect this to the Pi, you'll need an HDMI DVI converter. A DVI monitor will give you a high-resolution image, but this type of connection does not carry audio signals.
If you have a VGA monitor, you're going to want the PiView HDMI to VGA adapter. It simply plugs into your Pi HDMI port, and the other end, the VGA cable plugs in. Like a DVI monitor, the VGA cable doesn't carry an audio signal. The RCA connection will give you the lowest quality video output out of all the other options. To use this one, just like DVI, you're going to need an audio output. So this cable will go from the stereo port on the Raspberry Pi to the RCA style left and right audio connection.
But keep in mind, a lot of new televisions already have HDMI inputs, so for our purposes, that's what we're going to use. All right, so now we have the monitor, the keyboard, the mouse, and power cord all connected to the Pi. That leaves one part from the starter kit yet to install. That's the SD card. So the SD card contains all the memory that the Pi will have. There's no flash memory or hard disk on board the Pi.
The operating system for the Raspberry Pi, the set of basic programs, utilities that make the computer run, resides on the SD card as well. Instead of running an operating system that requires a costly licensing fee, the Pi runs an open source Linux operating system. In fact, you probably have some devices at home that run some flavor of Linux.
Yeah, like a Kindle.
Like a Kindle, like an Android smartphone, even some TVs, you know.
Yeah, so this operating system is really popular in the programming community, and since the Raspberry Pi was designed to create interest in programming, it totally makes sense to have the Pi run on Linux. And you'll see after we boot up, the user experience in operating a Pi won't feel that foreign at all.
This is one of the best parts of the starter kit, the 8GB SD card. It's formatted for the Pi, and it comes preloaded with a tool known as noobs.
Which is fun to say.
Yeah, it stands for new out-of-the-box software. Noobs allows you to easily install, remove, and then reinstall various flavors of the Linux operating system via its easy-to-use graphical user interface.
Okay, so let's install the SD card and power up. It only really fits in one way, so just make sure the copper tabs are facing the top of the enclosure.
You'll be greeted by the Noobs installation utility. The SD card has a few different flavors of the operating system to choose from for more advanced users and for experimenting. The recommended version is Raspbian, so that's what we're going to install.
You can install or reinstall the operating system on one SD card over and over, so just don't worry about making mistakes. Of course, if you do have data on the SD card, it will get overwritten.
Raspbian is now installing. Don't interrupt the process. Our 8 gig SD cards take about 10 minutes to install, but your actual mileage may vary. So we're going to skip ahead to it being complete.
Look, it's done. All I do is click OK. First time you boot up, you'll see the configuration tool menu. Be aware that the mouse is not active and that the up, down, left, and right arrow keys need to be used to navigate the menus. Enter is used to select things.
So let's set up some configuration settings for the Pi. First, we'll let it know which language we're using and what country we're in. This helps the keyboard work properly. Select 4 internationalization options, then select 11 change locales. The format of the locales is a 2-letter abbreviation of the language, an underscore, followed by a 2-letter abbreviation of the location, a dot or a space, and then the type of text encoding. The list is sorted in order by language.
So for example, English in the United States would begin EN_US, or Spanish in Mexico would begin ES_MX. Now, if you're really not sure which to select, the list is detailed in a link that can be found on the webpage where you're viewing this video. The final component of the text string is the type of encoding. If at all possible, select UTF-8.
This is very important. Once you find the correct locale, press the spacebar and an asterisk will appear between the brackets. Then use your tab key to navigate to OK and press Enter. You'll see the screen that asks again for you to confirm your default location for the system environment with the choices. Select EN_US. Then tab to OK and press Return. This took less than a minute with our 8 gig SD card.
You may also want to set up your correct time zone. Go back to the internationalization options, then change time zone. Then select your country from the list using the arrow keys on the keyboard, then the appropriate time zone from the list displayed. Press Enter, the system will update and return you to the main screen.
If you're a beginner, in my opinion, the best config setting is number 3, Enable Boot to Desktop. The dialog box says, should we boot straight to desktop? Press Enter with Yes highlighted. And there you go, the desktop version of Raspbian is displayed. We've successfully set up our Pi, and if you've been following along,